This final lesson is about teaching anchor and pull of the spine. This is about evenly lengthening the spine, one of the very few things in asana that we can't ever do too much of. You simply cannot make your spine too long. If you teach this effectively in poses where it is difficult to do, you strengthen the core musculature, which indirectly supports the spine, and the muscles that directly support the spine. That means you develop optimal postural habits in such a way that everyday life off the mat is greatly enhanced by a fully functional, highly supported spine, which is the central supporting structure for stability and movement of the entire body. Develop an understanding of how to facilitate anchor and pull in asana. What that means is that in any asana, you are holding one end of the spine stable, that is anchoring it, and you use some set of muscular efforts to pull the other end away from it. Teaching this effectively requires that you understand the anatomy of the musculoskeletal body. Let's look at some examples. In headstand, Shirshasana, we're stabilizing the shoulder blades on the rib cage to stabilize the head end of the spine, and then we're reaching through the legs to pull the tailbone end of the spine away from it. So we're anchoring at the end where the head is, and we're pulling the other end away from it. It's the opposite in Tadasana, mountain pose. We're pressing the thighs back and drawing the tailbone down and firming the side hips in to anchor the tailbone end of it. And then we're using the transverse abdominis and engaging the pelvic floor muscles to create an integrated set of actions that presses the crown of the head up toward the ceiling. Here, we're doing a fairly complex set of actions with the legs. The two legs are doing two different things to stabilize the tailbone end of the spine. And then we're taking advantage of the shoulder blades position on the rib cage, stabilizing the shoulder blades on the rib cage, and then simply by reaching the arms up, we also lift the ribs up, which lengthens the spine away from the tailbone end of it, which we've held stable by the actions in the legs. Here, we're stabilizing the tailbone end of the spine by doing a set of actions in the hips and legs, and then we're using the pressing down of the hands into the floor, the effort of depression of the scapula on the rib cage to lift the head end of the spine away from the tailbone end of the spine. And then the opposite here, we're stabilizing the head end of the spine by positioning the shoulder blades properly and then holding them there, fixed on the rib cage via the efforts of the serratus anterior muscles. And then we're using the hip flexors to lift the pelvis away from the head end of the spine. So the core musculature here doesn't do anything. It's the legs that provide the lift of the spine. It's the shoulder blades placement and stabilization on the rib cage that provide the anchor for the legs to pull against. So give yourself time to learn this stuff, but please learn it. It's profoundly important and so helpful to do it, to teach it, to learn it, and to practice it. When this is done skillfully, the teacher teaches the efforts needed to stabilize one end of the spine while teaching the efforts needed to lengthen the rest of the spine away from that anchor. It needs improvement if the teacher teaches the direction of length, but not the efforts necessary. That's the difference between teaching the appearance versus teaching how to do something, which we covered in the last lesson. Or the instruction somehow doesn't work. Watch your students and see if it works. If it requires stopping the class and showing them something else, breaking it down for them so that they understand what you're trying to convey, it's worth it. And it's absent when needed when the teacher does not teach to lengthen the spine or how to lengthen it in a pose where it is a critical element, like the ones that we showed here.